Now that the season is finished, what do the Jazz truly have in their trio of rookies going forward? Let's investigate.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Jazz. My name's Leaf Tulane, and I'm excited and honored to have the opportunity to fill in for David Locke on Locked On Jazz, just as I am every time I get to talk to you guys. As many of you guys know by now, I'm a lifelong Jazz fan. As a credentialed NBA draft analyst for Locked On NBA Big Board, attended the past 2 NBA combines, Utah Jazz broadcast assistant and statistician for the past 4 seasons, lover of college hoops. Don't expect all the geeky numbers you're accustomed to of usual that David presents to be gone, but I'll bring a unique perspective as diehard college hoops fan, NBA draft analyst, and a Jazz employee, and most importantly, a diehard Jazz fan to make you as knowledgeable as possible about your Utah Jazz in a critical juncture for the Jazz. Thanks for making Locked On Jazz your first listen each and every day. And remember, Locked On Jazz is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Jazz, where the best way to help us grow is to comment anything below. And today's question is, who's your favorite player to select at number 21? Thank you to today's episode being brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's right. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Jazz daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Jazz newsletter. Today, what do we have on the program? It's in the first segment. We're going to dive into the growth of Isaiah Collier and what is for real and what's just stats being presented to someone on a bad team. All teams need to score, and he's one of the beneficiaries. How real is his growth? In the second segment, we'll ask a similar question about Kyle Filipowski, and then we're going to talk about Cody Williams' game and put it under scrutiny. And same with Kyle Filipowski. It's not all rainbows, even though he had a phenomenal close to the season. And in the final segment, I'll give you my preliminary idea of the players that intrigued me most around pick number 21, and if there are any that I would trade up for. So let's dive right in. Yeah, one thing I want to tell you guys right off the bat is I said it during February when I filled in for David at a time that I believe Isaiah Collier is the steal of the draft. I still do. Like, that was when Isaiah Collier handed out over 100 assists in a month. That was in the month of January, and that joined the likes of Ja Morant, LaMelo Ball, and Trae Young as the only rookies to do so. But my goal in the episode is to tell you about the context of the good you observed in that growth, but also reiterate areas in which he can still grow for each rookie that Justin Zanuck and Will Hardy spoke about in exit interviews to the media. And I'll tell you how feasible I actually think that is, as opposed to telling you, of course it's feasible because they can get better, but how feasible is it on a team that we hope is good in a short time? For context, Collier scored 9 points, averaged 6 assists, shot 42% from the field, and only 25% from three. That's going to be reiterated. So here are the presented criticisms that he's had to outrun to truly establish himself as a big-time player and not just a starter on the bad team. Like, this is what he has to get better. He's not a good shooter. Like, 25% from three, you can't sugarcoat it. That's poor. That's very poor for a point guard, a guy with the ball in his hands. But he showed, despite that inability, he can still be effective by pushing pace and was truly the catalyst to the offensive success when the Jazz enjoyed the most offensive success this season. He was the catalyst. And I think two guys, namely, that were beneficiaries of the presence of Isaiah Collier in the starting lineup were Walker Kessler, 1, and 2, Keontae George, who came off the bench, accepted that role, and accepted playing off the ball and being a scorer. That's all great, but Will Hardy, toward the end of the season, was incredibly candid about a lot of his starters for the Jazz toward the end of the season were starters for what was, quite frankly, the worst team in the NBA. Like, that's what the Jazz were. They were 17-65 for a reason. And there's a difference of false confidence gained, in other words, complacency gained from what was, someone had to play. Someone had to play on a bad team. And, you gain experience, and that is good. But complacency and saying, I'm a starter in this league for that team versus a real valuable starting member on a very good team, that's different experience. And Will Hardy was candid about saying that's not one and the same. So Isaiah Collier, the way that he can prove he is a starter and regardless of team is he has to figure out how to shoot and stick as a starter and do so for a team that has an established pace, that plays a certain way, and he can be at the forefront of playing quickly, but the team needs to succeed in winning games and doing that. And it's not his fault that he's not. But the Jazz were quite literally the worst team in all of the NBA. And I think the Jazz had to try to be that bad, if we're being honest. I don't think the Jazz were the worst team in the NBA. I think the Jazz had to make an effort to put themselves in the position in the draft to be as bad as they were. And I think part of that is because Isaiah Collier surprised and elevated what the Jazz were and made it harder to lose as many games as the Jazz did. But with that said, they still weren't good. In media exit interviews, I'm pulling up a quote for you guys. Hardy talked about the conditioning needing to be a superpower, and his exact quote was superpower. Hardy often refers to the things and traits that make a player stand out, as opposed to talking about the negatives. And so many media members ask about the negatives and harp on the negatives. And Will Hardy often rephrases those when speaking about his players. So I thought this was an interesting one, obviously implying that Collier can improve by talking about his conditioning needing to be a superpower. But if that's the focus, that leads me to believe that he intends for the Jazz to play at light speed next season and highly integrate what Collier's good at to make conditioning be his superpower. Like, if he's going to be questioned about his conditioning, I didn't think it was noticeable that he was taking plays off. I thought he competes. So that means to me that they're going to buy into playing even faster. Now, the other thing is shooting. Like, no one's surprised at that. Hardy wants to see Collier refine his shooting stroke, which in my opinion did improve, but certainly has tons of room for improvement. I mean, he shot 25%, but from my own personal eyes that I watched him shoot, because I go to every game 3.5 hours early and watch them shoot, his rotation of the ball is better. And you're going to hear me talk about this with Cody Williams. Isaiah Collier's three used to rotate like a globe, as if when you're a little kid, you push the globe with one hand, the ball the spins sideways and over the top. So not just prototypical backspin. That got better. There's still not, it's not prototypical, but it's gotten better. Like I said, he wants Hardy. Let me rephrase this. Hardy specifically mentioned he wants him to be someone that's a shooting threat behind screens, because teams are sagging off of Collier and clogging the paint. And when there's a screen, they know Collier's proclivity is to go downhill. So when Hardy specifically mentions that Collier needs to improve shooting off the dribble and hiding behind screens to do so, I think that's a sign of belief in Isaiah Collier's ability to get better, because if he couldn't shoot and you knew it, you probably wouldn't want him to try to improve that. You'd live with him not being a very good shooter and live with what his strengths are and prioritize those quote unquote superpowers. I think that teams that once they can respect his 3-point shot, then his speed and ability to touch the paint, which he already possesses, becomes even more dangerous. Obviously, that's a glaring deficiency, shooting just 25% from range. But when teams tried to dare him to shoot it, he did shoot it. And this is a key point to me. So listen up if you guys are on board, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. This is how I knew before Isaiah Collier really started getting a ton of run and extended run that he would stick and maybe be very good. He shoots it despite those low percentages. And I'm going to say it again. He shoots it despite low percentages and plays with confidence. He plays with chutzpah. And even before he got a ton of run, he acted as if he belonged. His traits and confidence, the way he carried himself, looked as if he'd been there before. And it only became more self-assured as he got more run. And it wasn't, telling myself, yeah, I belong here doing this, and then having a reality check. Like, he extended his range. He expected to be good. He exceeded those expectations. I mean, he set a record for most rookies. And the guy who is the all-time NBA assists holder in John Stockton played on the Utah Jazz. Granted, he played more minutes, but still, it's a very difficult thing to do. And he acted like, oh, I'm grateful to achieve that award, but it didn't sound out of the ordinary or out of the realm of possibility to him, which means he really believes in himself and has that determination to show what he is and why he shouldn't have fallen in the draft. He then developed that confidence further and grew as a student of the game. I think one thing that really stood out to me is Will Hardy often throughout press conferences I attended pointed to being okay with turnovers, in which the Jazz led the league. He was not okay with turnovers, but he was okay with turnovers that were committed of a certain nature, of trying to be unselfish, trying to throw the ball ahead, and not live ball turnovers and turnover for touchdowns, for which the Jazz committed the most of and allowed the most fast break points, allowed most points off turnovers. All of those the Jazz led in all the worst categories. But Isaiah Collier's turnovers became more palatable and more willing to share the ball in the way that Will Hardy was looking for, as opposed to rookie mistakes. So in some, I think Isaiah Collier could become a 14-10 guy, and thus I'm very pleased with the outcome of Isaiah Collier being selected where he was, and curious to see what's attainable for him as the team finds the dudes who also put the ball in their hands, because the ball will likely be less in his hands, and therefore even more of the utmost importance to develop that three-point shot. That stat line's doable to me. I'm curious about how the shot diet will be, and I'm curious about how good the team will be if he can attain those statistics. But you ask me, I think the Jazz got a steal in a redraft. They probably got a top 7 pick in the class. Coming up next, we're going to discuss the evolution of Kyle Filipowski and what to make of Cody Williams' rough season. When I found out about Skims and that they were making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, I had to give it a try of my own. Let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear, fit, comfort, or just finding the right style for me. Skims changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with perfect balance of comfort and style. I tried the Skims Stretch 5 boxer brief and I'm hooked. These are they're absolutely perfect for my active lifestyle. They move with me for all the sports that I like to play, never lose their shape, stay in place all day, whether I'm working out or just running errands. They're the most comfortable and reliable underwear I've ever owned. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing, almost like you're wearing nothing at all. Shop Skims Men's at Skims Men's /LockedOnNBA and Skims stores. Let them know that we sent you. And after you place your order, select podcast in the survey and then select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. I also want to tell you all about Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. We all know that as Jazz fans, how electric the center can be. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels enormous. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices are on the app actually go down as the tip-off becomes closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to around 60%. Here's why I use Game Time. Like, this is the real reason. The last minute deals save 60% of buying last minute sports. If I don't know if I can be there and then I find out I really want to go to the game and I'm available, I can go to Game Time and I know I can get a good deal, and it saves me money rather than being crazy prices. The all-in pricing means that there's no surprise fees at checkout, and that's an added bonus. And what you see on the app is exactly what you pay. I love that. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All righty, welcome back to Locked On Jazz. I'm Leif Tulane, and we're going to carry on with the rookie review. So let's shift to another late round pick, or excuse me, a second round pick who thought he'd be a first round pick, and he expressed in the recent media how frustrated how frustrated he was for being left out of that first round, but how he's had a chip on his shoulder, and he's happy to be seen as someone in a redraft that would be higher than his selection. That's Kyle Filipowski. Kyle Filipowski was the rookie probably generating the most buzz at the end of the season, as he was excellent to close the year, particularly shining against Portland, where he scored 30 points and recorded 18 rebounds. But in the final 30 games of the season, this is just to show you that it wasn't a flash in the pan. He averaged 14 points and 8 rebounds on 36% from deep as a 7-foot rookie. So there's a real track record of impressive success. Now, it's worth mentioning the Jazz did not fare well in those games, so you could make the argument for empty calories. But you watch the games and you come out impressed. Much like Isaiah Collier, Flip was a starter elevated to play on a bad team and not a real deal NBA starter. I think those were two players that were mentioned by Will Hardy, saying, you know what, it's difficult to start in the NBA for winning teams, and it's difficult to assess if the guys starting now and doing well in their roles are good enough to play on contending teams. He mentioned that when they played the Celtics, and obviously neither of these guys would start in the Boston Celtics yet. So his pitch as a prospect, though, if we're talking about Kyle Filipowski as a rookie and then where he is now, his pitch in the draft process was never that he could be a great defender, and it was that he was a better shot maker and better shooter than the college numbers showed, and that he could hold up and a secondary creator, an offensive hub, much like a former Jazz man like Kelly Olynyk. And that's who he is most often compared to. And I think he's more than held up that his end of the bargain in that particular comparison and expectation. Flip demonstrated the offensive capacity and creativity far beyond his years. He handles the ball well for a big, and he makes very good instinctive reads, not forcing the preconceived notion of, oh, here's the play. It's going to be a pass off to the left wing to Sensabaugh. Instead, he makes the right read based on the game coming to him. And I think he thinks the game far better than people of his own age, both on the Jazz and around the league. When you think of Flip, you think of the ball in his hands and what he can do as an offensive weapon, an option and weapon. Will Hardy, in his exit interview, mentioned when speaking about Kyle that Flip is a good shooter and needs to improve his consistency of his shot and the confidence of how fast he releases it. So he knows, hey, this is a good shot to take, and takes it with confidence as opposed to catching, thinking about shooting, and then having to reset the offense to get that advantage that was there. And most importantly, in Will Hardy's presser, he talked about Kyle's necessity to become a better defender, a more solid defender who gets places sooner rather than relying solely on being tall and being able to make plays aerially, and not necessarily as a shot blocker, but like he has good hands. He has good anticipation, but his feet are a bit slow. And in my opinion, in my own observations that Will Hardy didn't talk about, he talked about getting there earlier, places sooner on the floor rather than relying on length. I think that's because Kyle Filipowski has always been bigger than his opposition, so his coordination and anticipation make up for deficiencies in terms of speed. My thinking about what Flip is down the road is he's too slow-footed to guard fours in the NBA, and when he plays the five, teams hunt him as they switch guy. They say, you know what, we're just going to run the same action until we get a switch with Kyle Filipowski and attack him. And he was attacked mercilessly in many games to close the season as he got extended run, particularly when Walker Kessler was out. And at the same time, I think he's not physically strong enough yet to play down low. He gets bodied going for rebounds, and he is very inept at guarding the post compared to some of the other bigger bodied bigs that are youthful in the NBA. Like you think of Donovan Clingan, who Flip absolutely got the better of when they matched up. Clingan's more well equipped to defend the post. That said, he doesn't have the offensive talent and repertoire that Kyle Filipowski has. So that's certainly something where Kyle Filipowski needs to improve. No doubt about it, Flip is surely a success story in that he's been much better than the 32nd pick. And I think he's been much better than the 32nd pick is pretty much in general. And you could say 22nd pick, he's been better. You could even say 12th, he's probably been right on par, maybe even better. So maybe Jazz fans can have some sort of comfort about Kyle Filipowski being a rotation guy. But that said, I think there are deficiencies that give me hesitancy to believe in his ability to contribute on a winning team, because defensively, a five-man is so vital to NBA basketball. And while there's comfort about taking him where they did, I do think there needs to be tempered expectations on a winning team for Kyle Filipowski, because his offense is less of a plus in a playoff situation than his defense is a negative at this point. You could make the same case for him taking those physical strides and translate it to Cody Williams. There's no sugarcoating it whatsoever. That Cody Williams being the 10th pick made his season worse, whereas Kyle Filipowski being 32nd in comparison made his season better. Cody needs to get stronger. Like, that's the first and foremost thing for Cody Williams. He needs to get stronger, physically bigger. And then Will Hardy said it right at the outset, and I was eagerly awaiting saying this myself. I'd written the notes already. He needs to retool a shot. That's exactly the verbiage I used to write it down. That's exactly the verbiage that Will Hardy used in his exit presser. It's saying that he needs to retool a shot. Cody was a guy that coming into the draft, I valued his versatility because, as I mentioned to you on yesterday's show with Spencer, I think athletic guys who are intelligent and can fill multiple roles and have showed that in college are really impressive because they can mold into what your team needs. And that's one of the things I really value. But I said in pods before last season, after we had drafted him and after I'd watched the Summer League, in which I was still pretty high on Cody Williams, I think he should be getting the G League just for physical growth and having the ball in his hands, gaining confidence and gaining an understanding of what it takes to play against grown men. And I think that would have been conducive to his health and his mental fortitude, because he gets into the game because Taylor Hendricks goes down in game 3, and now he's a starter. And I liked that. I don't disagree with him playing those minutes, because why not play the youth when a vacant spot is opened up? But that early exposure and then early struggles made it look like it was a demotion to go to the G League, as opposed to Taylor Hendricks or Ochai Agbaji, who started in the G League. And as a result, Cody Williams looks like a deer in headlights often, and far too often. And even his better traits of athleticism, defensive versatility, length and activity, and impressive finishing that he displayed in college became muted, and they became non-existent, as he almost looked fearful of catching the ball at times. The most glaring issue is he's so slender, and mono does not help that. That's how he finished the season. He had mono. And so I don't know if that helps his weight going down the road, but that's the big key of getting stronger. And then the more basketball skill-oriented developed one is that he has absolutely zero backspin, no motion on his jump shot. The rotation is zero. His offhand doesn't interact appropriately. It kind of comes off the ball and his thumb pushes it. If you're watching on video, you can see what I'm doing. If you're right-handed, you have your right hand here, and then your left hand comes in through the ball. And I watched him up close, and I talked to a coach, Tim Lacombe, who coached at BYU, all the time. I said, man, they've got to be working on that. And Will Hardy talked about retooling the shot, so that gives me hope. And I watched every pregame and marveled at the lack of development, because most people change their shot. Taylor Hendricks added about 2 feet of arc. But the retooling of form means that it would even have less confidence when he shoots it in game. So it makes sense. I understand the difficulty of switching midseason, but I'm eager to see how that evolves, because that can help him in a lot of different ways and open up a lot of his best attributes if he knocks down threes at a respectable level. So the other point I would make to you is the touch probably can't be that bad if he shot 41%, regardless of how little volume there was in college, considering there's no backspin. But that was alarming to see in person each and every day, and there was very little improvement. My thought of ceiling for Cody entering that draft was 15, 5-5, a tertiary supplementary player, an ancillary piece to a really good team. And now that seems far-fetched. I'll fully admit it. But the length and defensive allure is still there. I think there's still a world that Cody ends up being a better player than Bryce Sensabaugh, who shot the cover off the basketball, or Kyle Filipowski, who showed that offensive intrigue due to so much better defensive capabilities. And it's possible to improve your shot more so it is to become quick defensively. Cody always was going to be a ways away from impacting positively right away, but that doesn't mean there's zero chance. And I don't think top 10 makes it as palatable. But if you look at it from the bright side, the Jazz are not the only team who drafted a player who was picked highly and did not play much or did not play well. And if Cody Williams gains 15 to 20 pounds, a lot can improve, whereas a lot of these other players may not just have the requisite skills. So Cody can do that. It's definitely a disappointing rookie season, but the Jazz, at the very least, in a redraft, can say we have 2 top 15 picks that probably receive all rookie votes, and maybe we'll have someone on an all rookie selection between Collier and Filipowski. The spots don't matter beyond that, so I'd call it a success, even though the top pick looked like a glaring downside. Like, you look at the top 10, you say, oh man, we screwed up. But if you end up in a redraft with 2 guys out of 3 picks within the top 15, that means it's success. And I'm curious to see how many of those guys can do it on a winning team. Time will tell. With that said, coming up next, I'm going to give you guys a brief breakdown of some guys Spencer and I touched on yesterday. And for everydayers like Cammie, this will be an additional breakdown of what we talked about yesterday. But the goal is to familiarize you guys with the games of the guys that fit the Jazz and the archetypes that we referenced as impressive candidates that fit the billing at 21. All that and more ahead straight away on Locked On Jazz. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Yeah, that's right. Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports, College Football 25, to Call of Duty, Black Ops, and Avwed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. It can do it all. There's endless entertainment, and as someone who doesn't play a lot of video games, that means a lot to me, because there's 4K streaming, and I can watch any of 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from all your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. And I love to take advantage of that feature all the time. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass, Ultimate Subscription, and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including the Fire TV Stick 4K, that's the second gen Fire TV Stick 4K, first and second gen, and the Fire TV Cube, which is third gen. So make sure to go get yourself an Amazon Fire TV Stick and get going on all the enjoyment that can provide. So welcome back to Locked On Jazz. I'm Leaf Tulane, and here's my wish list at 21. First on the wish list is a guy that Spencer and I referenced yesterday, Carter Bryant. Let's familiarize you. 6'8", 225 pounds, 37% from three, and an excellent defender with activity and traits that you just can't teach. He reminds me of a couple players that you guys have seen plenty of. Jaden McDaniels would be one of the premier defender archetypes, and he's got a body that resembles McDaniels in terms of length, and he's even got a far more girth and a better shot at this point. Tumani Kamara is a little bit smaller, but I think he's got some of those same disruptive traits, and a guy that he reminds me of in build and in terms of smoothness of stroke, because you don't typically get someone who's as athletic and twitchy with as good of a shot, or at least looking shot. Jeremy Grant around the Denver days when he embraced the defensive role before he went to Detroit and became an offensive guy. That reminds me of what I think Carter Bryant's best role could be. So those are some comparisons for Carter Bryant. He's at the top of my wish list and a guy I'd easily trade up for because I think he could be very good for a long time. Now, if we're going to go with a guard direction, Carter Bryant obviously being a wing, my preferred guard would be LaBaron Philon, a 6'4" guard from Alabama who started on an Elite Eight team. He scored 11 points per game, shot 32% from three, so a little bit iffy from three. He had 4 assists per game while playing with a first-team All-American point guard. He added 3 boards. And the first thing you're going to notice about Philon is how hard he plays. It's uncommon for a player as slender as he is to put himself out there and ram into screens, go for boards. He hounds players at the point of attack and navigates around screens very well defensively. And while his game's predicated on speed, there's less reliance on speed to get where he wants, as he's got some athletic traits that are rare, but understands when and where to pick when he attacks the gap and where he's going to go. It's not just sheer speed, elevate, and kick out. I think he's a more calculated player than many who have those same athletic tendencies as LaBaron Philon. His question will be, how well does he shoot it? Another guard that intrigues me, though I'll readily admit I think wings are more likely to be selected here at 21, is Ben Saraf. I mentioned him briefly yesterday. He's 6'5", 200 pounds. He plays in Europe, averages over 10 a game at 18 years old. He's a guy who has the ball in his hands a lot. Think of Nikola Topic from last year, where you don't know how real the game is, but it's pretty hard to say a pro at 18 years old as the dominant ball handler who's a pick and roll savant is hard to overlook and not take seriously, especially after the successes of some of these foreign guards recently. He's left-handed. His shot's not beautiful, and he draws both positive and negative comparisons to Goran Dragic in terms of, hey, he's quick, he gets to the rim, and he's clever. But then there's the negative stereotype of, oh, he's European, he may not be the best defender and all these things. So that's a comparison you may see thrown around. To me, he's a natural when changing speeds and directions. He's quick getting to the rack, but not super fast in a straight line. He doesn't necessarily have to get where he wants with speed, but as he gets stronger, I think his excellent ability to decelerate, much like Luka Doncic and James Harden, where they are incredible at that, he's very good at decelerating, having his defenders go by him, and strong enough to get off shots. And I think he's only going to get better at that. Then you're going to go to another foreign guy, and that's a guy named Noah Essengue. He's a wing that intrigues me. I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone as a team's going to reach ahead of where the Jazz are picking, and I wouldn't be mad if the Jazz traded up for him, but though I'm a little less high on him than I am Carter Bryant. Essengue has a gangly body. He's very thin. It resembles that of Tayshaun Prince, but Tayshaun Prince obviously was an excellent defender and used that wingspan and gangliness to be disruptive. He's not quite the same build as you may be assuming of Tijon Salaun or Bilal Coulibaly. Those guys had more muscle on them, though they're very long-limbed. And unlike many projects of that ilk, that type of prototype, Essengue has been extremely productive at the professional level, as opposed to, wow, his body's unbelievable, I'm intrigued. He's got production to back it up. And maybe if you guys are true draft sickos, you may remember in October of last season, Essengue during a preseason game between Ratio Farm ULM, which is where Killian Hayes played. That's where he just played as well. They played the Portland Trailblazers, and he scored 20 points, and he hadn't even turned 18 yet, and he hit 3 threes in that game, and he had 8 rebounds, and that was as a 17-year-old who, like we said, is like a baby giraffe. He's very long, has a lot to learn, but he does seem to know what he's doing on the court. And here's a fun fact for you that I found stunning when looking at. For a player lacking the physical size and girth, and honestly just functional strength, Essengue creates a ton of contact and uses it to his advantage. He's been a foul drawing machine. Absolutely ridiculous productivity getting to the free throw line. He actually has a higher rate than what Julius Randle had at Kentucky in 2014. And Julius Randle, as you know, has always been a wrecking ball. He's always been burly and strong, and he was doing that against college kids back then, just like he does in the NBA, and bullies his way to the rim. And Essengue gets the free throw line more frequently than Julius Randle. So there's some functionality to that project that is, mold this length and athleticism. There's some functionality to it. And the last player I think we mentioned briefly yesterday that fits the archetypes of a long athletic shooter that Spencer and I mentioned being one of our favorite prototypes is Will Riley. He's 6'8", 195 pounds. He's a streaky shooter that you can tell is very, very confident in his scoring ability. Like, he is not shaken by missing shots, takes the shots. He averaged 13 points per game in 25 minutes per game. So that's pretty good scoring, especially as not the primary option on a collegiate team. He played next to Kasparas Yakachonis, and he also shot 4 threes a game. And that's something I really care about because I think I respect volume most as the truest indicator of someone's shooting ability, as opposed to shoot free throws or 3-point percentage, because if you shoot a ton, that means that the team trusts you to take those shots. And at his height, with his length, he's pretty unbothered by a ton of contests. In fact, he actually shot a higher percentage of off the dribble threes and made those more frequently than threes unguarded on catch and shoots. And that shows shot making prowess. And I'm not bothered by missing open shots. I think as the season prolonged and progressed, I should say, he got better and more confident, and those shots became more and more frequently going in. And he's a guy the just watching his shot, the 33% he shot is not a bother at all. His forearm's pristine. He's an instinctual off the ball mover, hunts scoring. Like, he's a scorer. He gets downhill, though he's very slender and gets bumped off his spot. He gets to the line frequently. And for someone without a ton of explosivity to his game, Riley has shown a knack for finishing in the paint, both with touch and kind of understanding of angles. So I think Will Riley's height profile, it gives him an advantage that very few players with that same build and profile have, because he can make those shots, and getting stronger isn't just a suggestion, just like Cody Williams. It's an imperative. He's absolutely needs to, but because of his shooting ability and length, he becomes more versatile of a defender than you would be based on the physical attributes and explosivity. So he's afforded a few extra chances. These are some guys that I really like for the Utah Jazz. Let me know who else that you guys like, or which of these 5 that I mentioned stands out the most to you. And the playoffs may have been out of reach this season, but the future is bright for the Jazz. So stay updated on all things offseason news, draft coverage, and expert analysis by subscribing to Locked On Jazz, the newsletter. Plus, you can win big by subscribing between April 7th and April 30th of 2025 for a chance for one of these amazing prizes: a $2,500 Best Buy gift card to improve your man cave or woman cave and sports watching cave, and a $300 game time gift card, $300 game time gift card. That is a lot of money to spend on some tickets that you can now get courtesy of Game Time on us if you subscribe to the newsletter. And then there's a $200 Fanatics gift card. So you could win any of those prizes and go get yourself some Jazz swag with that. So get exclusive insights into free agency, draft coverage, and support the right team. Of course, the Utah Jazz, and team updates delivered straight to your inbox. Join the Locked On Jazz podcast for trusted coverage every day. Subscribe to enter today by clicking the link below in the description. And as always, thank you guys for listening, and I look forward to talking with you guys tomorrow.